Hi guys, it's Victoria Sinis. Welcome back to the Creating Gems podcast, and I have a guest, which is super fun. So, Vincent, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yo, what's up? Shall I look down the camera?
Yeah.
What's up, everyone? My name's Vincent. I'll tell you a little bit about myself if it helps. I don't know, I'm a dad. I've been married for pretty much 10 years now. Bit of my background is I spent pretty much the better part of the last 12 years in marketing and product development and working with creatives in the commercial sector. And I now am a full-time creative pastor at a church. And so it's kind of cool because like I met Vic here in the studio that I run also I also run this studio here. I met her here at a shoot maybe a couple of weeks ago. She said, "Hey, I want to punch out some podcasts." And I'm like, "Cool, I'll run the cameras." And now I'm in front of one. So I feel like I've been stitched up a bit, Vic. I think I've walked into a stitch up, but hey, if this helps you guys listening or watching online, if anything I say helps, um, I'm just glad I was able to help you guys. So if you hear anything that does help you, let us know. Drop a comment in the comment section or just DM Vic. And if there's a topic that we touch that you like, because I think we're going to keep this one pretty tight. But if there's any topics or themes that come up that you were interested in, drop a comment on it and maybe Vic can cover it in another one. If you hear anything you like, any themes, drop a comment and ask Vic to cover it with either myself, herself, or with another guest. But with that being said, Vic, let's get into this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So, a little bit of context for you guys. Vin and I were literally just chatting this morning off camera, and I just felt like it was such an incredible conversation. And so, I just wanted to bring it on. And
Mm,
basically, we were just running through exactly what today would look like. And I started to deep dive a little bit into addiction. And
mm,
we know from the first podcast, my story was struggling specifically with like substances, but there's so many other depths to this. And I felt like Vin just opened up a whole nother realm of actually what addiction is and like the root cause and the underlying reasons why perhaps we have good addictions, bad addictions, and just putting it through the lens of faith. And so I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And it just like really opened up my mind. So I just kind of want to like throw it back to you, Vin, of like, what
mm,
has that been like? Because you're kind of processing with me a little bit of what that's looked like for you in like
yeah,
your kind of way and perspective.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's fair. And like to be fair, Vic, and chatting to those who are listening who might have heard Vic's testimony or maybe feel like, oh, I haven't had a testimony like that. My story is not as deep. God isn't working as strongly as He did in Vic's story. I just want to encourage you guys. It's not the power, it's not the greatness or the excitement of a testimony that glorifies God. It's simply if you were lost and then He found you, that is a great story. That is the story, like at the core of it. And so for me, like, I've never touched drugs in my life. So I'm on the very opposite end in terms of like hectic partyness. I'm a very boring Asian guy. Um, but in my sense, like I was thinking about addiction and how it can be to like things that could be pretty healthy or, like for example, sometimes I wonder if I'm, addicted to working, you know. And that question came up. I was recently in a prayer meeting and um, for the folks who are watching who are not Christians, it's pretty much just a gathering of people who pray. Nothing crazy. But I was pretty much like in my mind, I was thinking about if there was anything that perhaps, yeah, that I wasn't holding on to that was giving me kind of like a safety net where as Christians, and so forgive me, fam, who are not Christians, but as Christians, what we are taught and what we should know is that our safety net should be Jesus.
Mm.
And I think what I realized when I was processing and praying this was like I perhaps was or am, maybe I'm going on this journey. And if my counselor is listening, you know what we're going to talk about next time. But like, maybe do I just stay busy because I'm scared of something? And I think that's like, put simply, that's the thing that started getting me thinking about if we are addicted to doing something or a certain lifestyle, why? And like, we know how because of the dopamine or the effect on our brain or whatever. But there's also another question of why. And yes, sometimes it's triggered by like childhood trauma And for those of you who suffered through that, I'm really sorry you have. But we really do need to ask ourselves, what is this giving us? Because it's giving us something. We
Mm,
like it, you know?
totally.
The inherent and perhaps sad thing about addiction is we actually like what we're doing
Yeah.
because it makes us feel a certain way. And I think what we were riffing about before the cameras turned on was pretty much if the why is based in a fear, like, you know, if I was, using recreational drugs, I'm taking them, I'm feeling amazing. And I like taking them because I don't know that there's any better feeling. I'm worried that I won't be able to experience anything greater. I
Mm,
fear. Now, I could be talking out of turn, having never done that, but that's just an example. For me, maybe it is I work too much, and maybe because I hustle and, I do a lot of things, but maybe it is something inside me that's saying, hey, I do all these things because I want to feel safe. And I
mm,
don't know that I can feel safe any other way than to do this, But we know, as Christians at least, we know that God is our provider. One of his names is Jehovah Jireh. And I know I'm trying to avoid Christianese a bit too much here, but like he is our provider. So I do know that in my heart, in my head, but do I know that in my heart? And do I know that he's going to keep me safe?
mm.
Or do I stay and I just keep hustling and I stay addicted to the work and I stay addicted to pushing too hard? It is a worthwhile question. And to be honest, fam, like I am still working through that. I'm hoping I'm not addicted to work for the wrong reasons, and I hope I'm not. But it is always worth asking, like, in what ways am I lying to myself about why I'm doing the things I'm doing?
Yeah.
And if it is from a place of fear or something that we know that God, our creator, is meant to fill in us, then I think there's a bit of work that needs to be done, uh, in the quiet place to remedy the head knowledge and turn it into like heart knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that's like, I guess that's what we were riffing about, and that's what I was talking about in terms of, um, yeah, any kind of addiction. But I think the main point there is if you are doing something out of fear, like why does that fear exist? And then you
Mm.
had some like great, I think, thoughts around like how to remind ourselves or get ourselves out of a fear mindset. Because honestly, if fear is one of the things that's holding you back from breaking an addiction or doing anything good for your life, then how do we remedy fear?
Yeah.
Because it's present and
Yeah,
it's real,
totally.
you
Totally.
know?
I think it's so good. And like two things that really stood out to me as well, even as you were saying that, is it's like, it's such like an accurate perspective, I believe, of like, I had so much fear in my life
Mm,
that I didn't think that I had the capacity to deal with it all, which is
mm,
why I kept running. I kept trying to numb it. I kept trying to
yeah,
band aid it because I thought if I actually faced what was going on, what was happening in my
mm,
heart, it was just too much. It was too hard. And there was such a fear there. And I'm noticed, like, even coming into the Christian world, that you're really correct in saying, I believe, anyways, that there's such an element of that, even in like the faith based world, of people
yeah,
are still, it might not perhaps be something as extreme as substances,
yeah,
but what are we doing? Because I still have to build, I still have to create, I
mm,
need to do, and that all comes from, yeah, a place of fear.
yeah,
And I think it's really interesting just seeing that that like hustle mentality or that fear mentality is still so prevalent even in people of faith.
yeah,
And so I hope that, yeah, anyone listening, like that's okay, number one. And like we're just kind
mm,
of like dissecting it a little bit. And some of the things that, two things I want to touch on is like identity, because I actually think that that's like such a critical component
yeah,
in this. But as you were saying, some of the ways that I think that we can kind of like combat fear, and I
mm,
think that they're really helpful.
yeah, come on.
Even just like personal things that I've done in my life is, yeah, like I think that one of the inevitable things that we have to understand is like we're
Mm,
going to be afraid.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
things are scary,
yeah,
and that doesn't mean that we should avoid them. And
mm,
I remember hearing a quote very early on, I think in the first couple months of me in this faith journey of, if I feel fear on it, I must move towards it. And I was like,
mm,
dang, that's so true.
dang,
And I was
yeah,
like, okay, so on my journey, I was like, okay, very early on, God's like, I need you to quit your job, not OnlyFans, but
yeah,
when I got like a normal job, I need you to get rid of all your money. Hey, I want you to go overseas. I want you to trust
cool,
in me. And I'm like, oh, I felt so much fear doing starting the
mm,
TikTok when I started it. I felt so much fear, but I was like, okay, I feel fear. I must move towards it.
mm,
And so I think having that mentality of we don't run from fear, but we must move towards
Mm,
it. And there is such it's really frustrating when Christians say the grace of God is on it, but there's
mm,
such a grace of God. And what that means, I think, in a very non-Christian way, is it's literally just someone like holding your hand, going, you know what, I've got you in this. I'm going to
that's cool.
support you and it's going to be okay. Let's do this together.
Yeah.
And that's like what I feel grace is, because we don't
Mm,
really deserve that, but it's the kindness of God to be like, I've got you. We're going to get through this and it's going to be
mm,
okay. And like in a simplistic form for like the context that we're talking about. And so it's like how do we like challenge fear? And you were talking about safety and all those things. And I
mm,
think that for me, I've had so many situations in my life where my safety has been
mm.
challenged. Like as I said in like the first podcast of my testimony, someone threw me through a window and tried to kill me. um, and
That
so
is crazy.
recently, yeah,
Oh my
wild, but
gosh.
it's a great story now of just the goodness of God.
Yeah, amen.
Um, and so I think that like a practical, hopefully people can take from just this short discussion that Vin and I are having is one of the things that now when my
Mm,
safety is challenged, and I've been in situations since coming into faith where I've been in dangerous positions again and literally had my
mm.
safety threatened, is now I look at the parallels
Yeah, cool.
and I go, okay, so there was fear in that moment. My physical safety was challenged. Where was God in that? And what were
Mm,
the parallels between something that happened last time, like when I got thrown through
yeah,
the window, and perhaps maybe that safety wasn't there in the way that I wanted it to be?
yeah,
But number one, there was still safety, but then how was it different this time?
yeah,
God, where did you show up?
yeah.
And that for me was really able to retrain my brain into going, wow, even in unsafe
Mm,
situations, I can sit there, I can reflect, and I can see Jesus in all of it.
yeah, so good.
And so it kind of comes back to like that point of reflection. And I think that that's what you were saying about like the quiet time. And so like I hear that all the time, like in Christianity
Mm,
now as well. Your quiet time, your quiet space. Like, but why do you think
mm,
that's so significant, especially in like addressing this thing of like fear?
yeah. Yeah, I'll answer the question, but first I want to agree with you in terms of like,
Yeah.
I also want to clarify. I don't think Vic's saying run towards danger.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
so run
Thank you.
towards, you know, yeah. So take it with a grain of salt in terms of running towards fear. We're not saying
Please don't start punch
don't
ons with
go,
people.
yeah, don't go into dangerous scenarios. All right, guys. But yeah, I totally agree. The things that God often calls us to do. So now I'm going to preach.
Yeah.
But the things that often calls us to do require courage. And I think it's a great encouragement that like courage is not the absence of fear. So you're still running towards the thing that God's asking you to do, and
Mm,
there'll be fear there, right? But courage is not the absence of fear. It's action, faith aligned action in the presence of fear, you
yeah.
know? And I think that's a really healthy way to digest the concept of fear as well. But in terms of like the quiet time, I think one of the things that helps me, like, guys, I reckon I'm scared every day because
Mm,
I do so many different things with my life. And a lot of the time, I'm doing things for the first time. I'm always doing things for the first time. And first time is always scary, always. And I believe in some of the things I do, even the 10th, 100th time is still scary, right? So I think still run towards fear in that way, not danger. But also, how do I have the courage? How do I find courage? Then,
mm,
then there's a question: how do you find courage? And I think it is really, if you think there's an area of your life or an activity that you feel fearful in, or you're insecure in, or not secure in, I should say, um, then I think what we have to do is remind ourselves of when God has come through.
mm.
And like for a guy who's scared quite often, because I'm doing new things quite often, I only have to look back to yesterday. But like, I think it's just taking the time to sit in your quiet space or whatever you want to call it, but just
Yeah.
literally sit and have an open hearted prayer and say, Lord, I'm so scared to do this next thing. But I do remember the last time I did something scary, you were there. And I
Mm.
do remember the last time I did something scary, you were there too. Like, and what you were saying about someone guiding and holding you. And I think we have to remind our souls, like, constantly, the same God who delivered you out of X, Y, and Z scenario will deliver you out of the next ABC, or will be with you
Mm.
in the next ABC scenario and forevermore.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that really is helping me. And so when I say, if I'm going on this journey to find out what I'm really fearing, um, I think the way that I actually go on that journey is, yes, we seek out help from external, trained professionals. but also have that quiet time, have that prayer time and be like, Lord, I have to do this scary thing again.
Mm.
And it's a little bit bigger than last time. But Lord, you were there last time and you have no limit. So nothing
Yeah.
is big or small to you, Lord. When you have no concept of size because you're infinite, then there's nothing that you can't help me overcome. But I do need to remind myself because I'm human and I
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah.
I forget that like there was a time, guys, when I talk about safety and being a workaholic and all this stuff, and perhaps I am, but I don't know. I'm gonna work that out.
Did you just write yourself out a
Maybe
little
I
bit
just wrap
there?
myself out.
No.
But like I remember there was a time when I lost my job and I just didn't care. Like,
Yeah.
and guys, I had responsibilities at the time, but I just didn't worry because I knew, Lord, you've been there for me in the past.
Mm.
You'll be there for me again. And I lost my job at a pretty bad time to lose a
Yeah.
job. I just found out we were having another kid and I just signed like a mortgage for a house. And then it's like, hey, man, you don't have a job anymore. So I've known God to be safe. I've
Mm.
known him to look after me and I know he does. But I think sometimes life gets busy, time goes on, and then we forget the goodness of God. And so I think my main encouragement, if there was any in this you know, impromptu little podcast here, is are you spending the time in the quiet place to remind your soul of who our God is?
Yes. So good.
You know?
Yeah.
Because on the days that I fear the most, I think it's because I didn't spend the time to remind myself of the
Mm.
goodness of God. And the cool thing is, he might just reveal to you not only that he's still good and he's going to look after you, but there's something even greater than what you think on the horizon. It's going to require courage, but I'm going to be there with you, you know?
Yeah.
And there's so many things that like dreams and visions that I'm sure that you have and that I have, Vic, um, that God's going to require us to find courage.
Yeah.
And I think the more time we spend reminding ourselves of who he was in our life and will continue to be, I think the greater chances there's the chance of us actually grasping that thing he has for us are far greater. And so I think, yeah, the quiet time matters.
Mm.
Hard to do in a day and age like this. But like if you want to find that courage, I think you got to go to the source. So
Totally. Like, and on that, like, I feel so fired up, but just like a closing thought of like, as you were talking and we're talking about people being courageous and, you know, being able to break through barriers and all of this, I can't help but think about how I spoke in the last episode on like Esther and like these other women that are so
yeah.
courageous.
Oh.
And I'm like, guys, like I think that
Mm.
your internal framework as well is so important. Your self-talk,
Mm.
and where you get your self-talk from is honestly the Bible. And
Mm.
it's like when I'm asked to do something that's scary or I do feel
Mm.
that fear, and like I want to revert back to perhaps like old patterns, even if it's old ways of thinking or
Yep.
whatever. What's my self-talk? And
Mm.
so that's where I'm like, the Bible, I truly believe, is everything because it shows us the character of God.
Yep.
As you said, go to the source. And so I read, I will never leave you nor forsake
Mm.
you.
Mm.
Like, I do not fear, like, I have overcome the world. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, man, like, greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. And I'm
Come
like,
on.
okay, sick. You know what? If I take God at his word,
Yeah.
he tells me that he will never leave me.
Yeah.
So that means I can do this thing. And God, that's where your character has to come in. And he has an impeachable character.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, God, I can step out. I can do that thing. You say that there's all these barriers against me. There's all these things coming, but you're greater than everything in
Yeah.
the world.
Amen.
So sick, I can do it. And it comes back to that self-talk. But where
Yeah.
do you get the context for that?
Yeah.
And so I hope, honestly, I feel like this is just like a wrap up of like an encouragement to like get in that quiet time, whatever capacity it looks like,
Yeah.
and read your Bible and like really take the scripture at its word. That's what I've done every single day in this like very radical and accelerated journey is gone, Jesus, you said that I'm more valuable than many sparrows. Okay, that means you're going to provide for me in this. So like
Yeah.
I can, you know, with my mustard seed of faith, I can make mountains move. Okay, what are the mountains in my life that we're moving?
on.
All right, let's do it. And I just keep it as simple as possible when I'm really fearful of, okay, what is your word? What does it say? I have to take you on that. Because if we don't believe that God is the truth, then honestly, like our faith kind of is like null and void. Like what's the point in it? So that's something as well I just hope to like encourage people with of like, if you read the scriptures and just take it at its word of what it says, when you're put in a position, and to tie it all back, I guess, with addiction and like this thing of fear and everything like that, put God at his word, say those scriptures out loud and just say, God, you say that like, I am more than a conqueror. Okay, God, like
Yeah.
come through on this. I need your help with this. I need to shatter these limitations and these barriers. And I think that that's how we'll really be able to have conversation. Well, like, sorry, that's how we'll be able to do hard things, do scary
Mm.
things. So,
Yeah.
and we're placing all of that trust in God and in his word. And then
Mm.
inevitably all those bad addictions or maybe those bad things, they kind of don't come around anymore because we're taking it back to the source and we're relying on that. So
Come on.
anyways, that's just my little bit of like what I took from what you said of like, yes, like it's so true. Like go back to the source. And if you can just
Yeah.
rely on God and take him at his word. But to do that, you need to understand, well, you need to read what's in the Bible. And to do that, you need that quiet time.
Mm.
Hey.
Yeah.
So
You're spot on.
yeah.
Mm.
Any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? No, my only final thought, I guess, is, seek your quiet time with the Lord. Subscribe to this podcast. And yeah, tell Vic what you want to hear. She's doing a good job out here, I think. And yeah, let her know what sort of content and themes you want covered over her podcast, and keep tuning in.
Thanks, Vin. Guys, I need him on every podcast, hey, just to
Right.
plug. But no,
Maybe.
thank you guys so much. And yeah, I hope that this was informative and helpful for you in some capacity. So we'll see you next time.